Hello all, welcome to Seamedu's Candid Talk, and I'm really happy to have our guest with us. Our guest for today is Jugal Purohit. He is senior broadcast journalist with BBC. To introduce him, he started off his journalism career for almost a decade before. He has he has worked with the one important thing to talk about Jugal is, of course, he has worked with all the three mediums of journalism. He started off his career in print. Of course, he started off by writing with national newspapers like Midday and UA newspaper, which was again a Mumbai-based tabloid newspaper. Then he switched to as a senior correspondent. He worked with Times Now. After that, he has worked with India TV television, and now he's working as a senior broadcast journalist with BBC. And he is a producer for the Daily News Bulletin, and he looks after five languages news bulletin, which is Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, Telugu, and Tamil. After doing his bachelor's in mass media, taking major in journalism, of course, he completed his Masters of Arts in Defense and Strategic Studies from Savitribai Phule Pune University. And yes, I'm on behalf of students, on behalf of faculty, I welcome you, Jugal, to this Candid Talk and interaction about journalism. And we have named it New Age Journalism, yes, because we are going to speak about the current status of journalism, and I'm really happy to invite you.
Thank you, Sukha, and thank you, everyone. So just a minor correction there. I didn't work with India TV. I worked with India Today.
Okay, TV. India Today. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's from there is where I went to the BBC. So should we start then, Sukha? Yeah.
Yes. So, of course, I've introduced you. We have seen your journalistic career from print to online now. I would like to ask you, first thing that a journalist talks about is about beats, because you have been a hardcore reporter also. Of course, now you are into a role wherein you are producing news bulletin, but of course, you started off your career by reporting. I would like to talk about beats here. Can you just discuss about the different types of beats that you covered, and one of the favorite beat maybe which is close to your heart, if you can talk about beats in journalism and your experience in different beats.
Right. So the thing with beats is that it always depends on what news setup you're a part of. So if you're a city newspaper, then obviously things like civic issues, crime, local affairs, community reportage, all of those become important. If you're a national news organization, then your perspective is national. So economy is a beat, foreign affairs is a beat, defense and security is a beat. I personally have always been interested in defense and security issues and foreign policy. And as a result of which, even when I was with Times Now in Mumbai, I used to focus on the affairs of the Indian Navy, the affairs of the Indian Coast Guard. There's also things like the Baba Atomic Research Center in Bombay. Again, extremely interesting an organization. So I would track all of that. And then my passion and my interest in defense kind of took me to Delhi. And I have been kind of focusing on that for the last few years. Even now I write occasionally on these things. But the thing to note is that it always depends on your organizational setup. So just to give you an example, in BBC, I came and I realized that in India, we don't follow a beat pattern at all. There are journalists and they pick up issues and they deal with it and then they move on. Because it's a smaller team, you can't afford to have beats. So in BBC, journalists are supposed to be knowing everything. And they kind of do a story to story reportage and not stick to one beat. So it's always very flexible, but it's always also very important and interesting that if you have a passion for something, then that will automatically make you, even more interested. You will learn about it, you will read about it, you will keep thinking about it, and that always helps.
Okay. Also, like, because as in introduction I said that you have worked in all the three mediums, starting from print, then television, and then of course now online. Do you think, because we also have students here who are students of broadcast journalism, so do you think as a journalist, there needs to have you need to have one skill, and you have that one skill, and for all the three platforms, irrespective of your platform, you need to have that particular skill, that which is needed to be a successful journalist, or to be a journalist for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, that hunger and passion for news, like people call them news junkies and all, you got to have that passion to constantly track stories, constantly be involved in it, keep seeing what the updates are, keep thinking about it. So I think that's one thing which cuts across all, the different forms that you may choose to practice your journalism in. But I think there's also another couple of things which are really important, and they are uh, willingness to kind of, possibly not have a normal life, in the sense that, uh, not being possibly able to attend the marriages of everyone, or, have a very fixed formatted day, because your life in that sense is then no longer in your control, so as to speak. It's always driven by events, it's always driven by what's happening outside, it's always driven by an external factor. So I think for anyone to be a journalist, that openness of mind is very important. That I may not always be able to control my life, and that's very important to some people, and to some journalists and to other people, they're okay about it. But I would say that's at the core of being a journalist, the willingness that my day can shape up in whatever fashion. And I remember when I used to be an intern, I would be extremely thrilled, and I would tell my colleagues who were not an intern, or who were not interning at that time, that look, my 2 days are never similar. you know
Hmm.
Today I went to a area and did a story about that, then the second day I went to a completely different thing and did something else about it. So that's the thrill, and that's the joy which I felt when I started my career, and I think I still do. So I would say these are the two or three factors which you should keep in mind, as you practice to become a journalist.
Okay. So coming to BBC now, I when we actually spoke, I really said that I'm really liking what BBC is doing that, but then it is they're experimenting with their content, the way they are presenting. Can you talk about what what is this all about? How is BBC different? What the content they're doing, the presentation style that they are doing, and how this particular thing is important when you're talking about a new age journalism. What is the change that you are seeing from presentation on television to online? What is the change that you can see, or what are the experiments that you are bringing out?
So look, BBC is, you can say, very new to India, because these six languages that you mentioned, they have only been kind of built upon in a massive way in the last 3 years. BBC Hindi, of course, existed since a very long time, and so did BBC Tamil, but they were operating on a very small footing. But after 2017, six languages, including Hindi and Tamil, have been invested in a lot, and now they are in digital, now they are on TV, and now they're doing audio only bulletins. There are also podcasts that are happening. So we're trying a lot of forms. I think what the BBC does differently is slightly less important than how the BBC is really
Yeah.
different. And that's where I would say that, what you do is secondary, but what's more important is what you are and how you are, right? So I'll start my answer with that. As you probably know, and most of the students may probably know, BBC is a publicly funded broadcaster of the UK government. It is part of the UK government in that sense, but it retains a very high degree of independence. Uh, if you Google and you see the history of BBC, it has often kind of done reportage which has not possibly been to the liking of the British government also. So that's where BBC comes from. The taxpayers of UK kind of pay a license fee tax, and then out of that money, the BBC sustains. The investment in India and these 6 languages happened in 2017 because of a special kind of provision that the UK government made, and then they invested in some 40 odd languages across the world. And the reason that BBC has been able to stand out is because the BBC is always listening. It's always wanting to know what the audience is thinking, what the audience is consuming. So, for instance, a lot of our meetings are driven by the trends of the day. It can be Google trends, it can be Twitter trends. What is driving the conversation on that day, in that hour? And it's not always necessary. I mean, you can't always cater to every trend at all times, but it's always good to know what the trend is. And if there is something which has been trending, say, for 3 days or 4 days, or maybe twice in the last 5 6 days, you know that there is an appetite. So a lot of reportage, a lot of stories get planned around that, around those kind of topics. Trends are always important. We also kind of keep an eye on, many people go to Google and they ask, they simply ask questions. So we also keep a track on what is it that people are really asking for today. So these things get discussed. And the other very important pillar of BBC's journalism is impartiality, and its broad belief in what is called as public service journalism. So the BBC is here to answer your questions, to address your doubts, and to, in a sense, also serve your needs. Because if you are able to do journalism which is directly for the public's benefit, in either understanding an issue, assessing the quality of a policy, to question people who hold power, these are all things which are done in public interest. So these are the factors which really drive us: impartiality and public interest. And lastly, Sukhuda, since you mentioned about the different formats, this is also an organization which is obsessed with creativity. So we are always kind of talking to our leadership, and our leadership is talking to its own leadership. And the question always is, how can BBC be the most creative news organization around us? How can we do that? So when you start asking these questions, you are triggering an incentive for the doers, or people who are actually either the presenters or the producers, to constantly ask them, how can I be more creative? And creativity within the realms of journalism, within the pillars and the boundaries of journalism, is something that is heavily encouraged. It's celebrated, in fact, in the BBC. So that's why I can have an idea from anyone, and it's not necessary that a journalist has to give me an idea about how a report should be. There are often cross-departmental talks. We invite, for example, if, say, for example, there is a BBC Hindi bulletin that has gone on air, we often invite colleagues from BBC Tamil, BBC Telugu, and other teams to come and watch it. And of course, popcorns and chips are on the house, but they are asked to watch it, and then they're asked to say what they felt about the coverage, what they felt could be better, what they felt was not good at all. And these things are taken with open criticism, fair and constructive criticism. So all these factors, this is boldness in thought and this drive to be creative always. I think these are the factors which really help the BBC become a very creative organization. And all these things are the formats and the results of all the action that takes place where no one really sees it, but it's always a churning. And yeah, this is how I think we kind of deliver these things.
Also,
sorry, that was a
this,
long answer, I know. Yeah.
no, that's fine. But then taking this point ahead, when BBC is like, we are on digital platforms now. BBC is on digital platform, and people are saying that we can see everything because of media convergence. Maybe like we can see everything. We can also watch a television on mobile phone, or we can watch television on our laptops. In that case, BBC still believes in tying up with television. Like you have your daily news bulletins coming up on a few news channels, maybe on regional news channels. You have that tie-up. Can you talk about the economics that goes behind this, or the reach that BBC is looking for when it ties up? Because BBC is there, it can easily reach more and more people through their digital platforms. Then why television? Why television even now in this? When people are saying we watch television also on mobile phone.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, but the thing is, India is obviously growing very rapidly in terms of the digital reach and the smartphone penetration. But the fact is, India is not a US right now, or India is not, anywhere close to possibly say. I mean, the urbanization in India is nowhere close to what it is in many parts of the world. And also, there have been many people who have written the obituaries of the print media, have also started writing the obituaries of the television, medium as such. But the fact is that India's television reach is only growing. I was recently reading that India's television audience is still growing. And in India, it is still far from the situation where every household, or possibly every 1 in 2 households, has a television set. So the scope for growth is immense. It may not be taking the kind of giant strides that digital does, but it is not the case that television is not growing. And I think every time there is anything which is very, very dominating, like right now, the second wave of the coronavirus, people are turning back to their news channels. People are looking at television. You can see even in very mainstream news channels, they have advertisements in their TV channels, news channels, when they take a break. But when they are on YouTube, which is when you see them live, there are no ads there, because that's not monetized at all. No one's really willing to invest in watching NDTV or any news channel on YouTube. And that shows you that there is an audience on YouTube, which will grow on YouTube, but people are preferring the consumption increasingly, or rather, at least for now, largely on TV. So there is like a lot of area to grow in. And yes, I think why BBC chose to have these regional tie-ups, I think it's fairly simple. The rules in India do not permit FDI in direct ownership from foreign media organizations. I think the cap is less than 51%, and that means that if any foreign media organization has to come and have its own news organization, it has to be in a minority stakeholdership with an Indian major entity. And BBC chose this path because here what we do is we retain full editorial freedom as we go into another partner network, and we are able to do our journalism, and it's also traveling in the languages that we wanted to travel. So I personally think, I mean, outside of the BBC, when I learned about this model of operation, it kind of took my mind back to the days when, say, Pranoy Roy would possibly have, was hosting the World This Week on Doordarshan. Or maybe for those who remember how Aaj Tak started as a 30-minute show on Doordarshan, and then it became, of course, the channel that it is today. So it's kind of going back to those times, but it's also in sync with the present, because the present laws don't allow BBC to kind of operate its own news channel in India with full editorial control.
Okay. Also, it is very these days, it is very, because we are on digital platform. Coming back to digital platform, I'm again and again coming back to digital platform. We are as an audience, it is very easy for the audience to be a part of criticism. They can criticize anything very easily these days. You can just pass on your comment, you can post your comment online, and because of all these things, because it is very easy for people to give their feedback, to criticize any particular news content that you are creating. Do you think all these things affect your content creation, or we as a journalist needs to be more what can I say, it affects your creativity somewhere? Do you think, because it has changed altogether? People are more vocal about anything that you see online. Do you think all these things affect your creativity when you come, or not creativity, but then the presentation of news, or the side that you should portray in a news? Of course, there are two sides of the news. while you're portraying a particular news, we have to give a balanced reporting and all these things. It has more like, it has come into a like I now somewhere I think that now people or audiences are watchdogs of the content that news channels or news digital news platforms are creating. Do you think like this affect your content creation, or you have to keep that in mind while you are like creating anything?
So we always tell our producers that we should not ever be ignoring comments. We should always be open to the kind of comments that come. And then there are several types, isn't it? There are some who are people who will simply use the anonymity and the lack of physical presence to possibly just further a certain agenda or a propaganda. There will be certain ones who will possibly be, abusive towards what you do, no matter what
Yes.
you do. And then there are some who are genuinely giving you feedback. And I think I always discuss this with my team and with my producers, that let's always be open, and look for that that group of persons or online identities from where there is a genuine criticism or feedback that is coming through. So sometimes, and I would say just sometimes, not always, but sometimes it has helped, in the sense, if for instance a show has a certain technical issue, for example, there are sometimes comments which come and we really appreciate them, because they tell us things like, hey, look, there is something, the audio is completely blank over there, we can't hear anything. And that helps, because then we are able to go back and rectify, and also give feedback to somebody whose job it was to make sure it did not go blank. So it helps on many occasions, but you have to always tread this ground with a lot of caution, because the anonymity that the online feedback mechanism grants is not always used in the way it should be used by some sections of those who comment. So I would say it's always a good kind of instant feedback mechanism, but it's a mechanism to be viewed with a degree of caution, and you should know where to engage and you should know where to not engage.
Okay. Also like there are some section which directly says that this particular news platform is completely biased. Biasness has become, it's again a point of view of each audience. But then yes, you have a tag on you, like okay, BBC hai, so they are going to be partial towards the government, they are going to be partial towards, they are anti-government, or such comments are very common. And not for BBC, but then this is seen for across the platform. Like any news portal you pick up, they have their own biasness. Like you can see that these are the biases. How can a journalist stay away, or how can a news portal stay away from such biasness? Or do you think like this biasness, or these days when a news platforms come on a digital platform, do you think that they come with a particular biasness in them, because it is more easy, because you don't have a check on that? Like when we used to talk about newspapers, they used to have their own ideologies. Every newspaper used to have their own ideology, or rather they also have their ideology. Similar thing is, can you see similar thing on digital platforms? And when it comes to BBC,
sorry,
can you also see this in BBC? Do you have any editorial policy when it comes to BBC?
So if you observe BBC closely, I do find it quite, worth mentioning here that BBC is one organization which does not write its editorial. Okay. You have editorial pages in all the newspapers, and then there are news organizations which appear heavily biased, only doing propaganda, and they have very blatant takes, telling the viewers that they should be doing this and all. But BBC is one organization which never writes an editorial to begin with. And as I said at the start, the whole aspect of impartiality is taken with utmost seriousness. It's not just in our practice, but it's also in how we are perceived by you or by the audience, by anyone outside. So we do take it extremely seriously, and that is why it's very rigorously done. I mean, any news article that has to be published, there's a lot of rigor that is involved in it. There are a lot of editorial wettings that happen. And I would not like to comment on, whether some organization does this or not. But I think it's to think that you will do something and you will get away with it. I think is 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 a case of an organization fooling its own self. The audience is not blind. The audience is not deaf. It's not dumb. It understands what you're doing. Maybe it is with you for a certain while because whatever the reasons are. But to say and to think that you have an agenda, but you are able to portray yourself as neutral to your audience, I think that's living in fool's paradise. There are the audience is far too wiser, and I think I'll again come back to BBC that what we do, and interestingly, that's what we always learn in journalism schools, that it should be the reader who should decide what is the outcome of a certain report. It should be the reader who should decide, oh, so this means that this policy was wrong or this policy was right. That should be the reader's job, not the journalist's job to say. So the journalist's job is to put all the facts together, maybe get an expert to interpret it, but then that is not the journalist's job to give a takeaway or to kind of wrap it up or to sum it up. And which is why we don't write editorials, and I don't think I would personally ever want to go and do the work for the audience. I think the audience is fairly intelligent.
Okay. Coming to your reporting experiences, because recently you did a very wonderful story, and we also I also appreciate about it. You did one investigative report about the lockdown scene in India, last year's lockdown scene in India. Can you elaborate what goes into this research part, into this investigative part? Because when we are investigative reporting is one of the very glamorous subjects that you see in a syllabus of any of any maybe media school. But what is it? What is the hard work that actually goes behind? How long does it take? Or if you can give example of the story that you did, how long did you wait for the research? How long did your investigation move on? Or you have to wait, you have to be dependent on the answers that you are getting from the government or from the bodies that you are questioning to. So can you make our students understand the process of what goes into an investigative report?
Yeah, sure. So investigative reporting is basically when you kind of move beyond the obvious things of a story, like the 5 Ws and 1 H. Investigative story is anything where you kind of want to scratch the surface and go beyond that, go deeper into something. So if we are to just take the example of the story that Sukta just mentioned, we took nearly 7 months to kind of ready that story. The seeds of that kind of were sown after the lockdown happened, and then kind of reaching out, we filed almost 300 plus RTI applications across the country with different authorities in different states, center, everywhere. And the whole essence of investigative journalism is that what you do should be unquestionable. What you presented as your report should be something which is so powerful, which has no holes, which has no inconsistencies, and the other side, against whom, or with regards to whom you've done the investigation, cannot possibly poke any holes and say that's wrong or this is incorrect. So as I said, we took about 7 months. The ground has to be absolutely firm. And what you do, again, I'll take this example, that what we did was we filed close to 300 RTI applications with important ministries, with important departments, especially from the public health point of view. And in each of them, and over repeated number of times, not just once, because one application maybe not answered, or maybe answered by somebody incorrectly. but multiple applications cannot always be, just rubbished by somebody saying, oh, that was a wrong answer. So we filed multiple applications with multiple authorities in multiple areas with a simple question in our mind that, were you consulted? Did you know that this lockdown was going to happen? What were the inputs that you gave in the planning of this lockdown? Now, we all remember the extremely painful images of those migrant workers having to walk back for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. So let's take the example of the labor ministry, which is supposed to be the vanguard, or the custodian for the rights of these migrant workers and laborers. I'm talking about the central labor ministry, which is also incidentally called labor welfare ministry. So we reached out to them and we asked them all these questions repeatedly. And the thing is, when you ask these questions in terms of an act, they have to give you an answer which is factual. And it's then those answers started coming that we were not consulted, we had no idea about it, we had no inputs to give on how to protect these migrant workers. And this is a pattern which kept repeating. This pattern started with labor ministry, then it came from various state governments, and then the picture emerged that the key people who should have ideally advised the government, or rather who the government should have listened to before taking a drastic step of this magnitude, which no one in the world had done by then, even China had not done. So who are the people who the government should have talked to so that it was planned to the extent possible, it was smoothened to the extent possible, and then every institute kept telling us that, look, we were not asked. So ultimately the picture emerged that except possibly one man or possibly two people, most of the key ministries or most of the key bodies who hold the specialization to advise, especially in such circumstances, were kept completely in the dark. And even though all these answers are coming, mind you, from the government itself, these are different ministries of the government, answers came from them. But still, after we compiled all the answers, we again reached out to the government. Remember, I told you there should be no holes, there should be no ground that anyone can come back and hit you with. So we again reached out to the government and we gave them not one, two, but we gave them 3 full weeks. And we said, look, this is our finding. This is what we have understood after talking to so many departments for 7 months. Do you want to answer some questions on it? Do you want to explain something that we may have missed? Do you want to take our questions? And the Ministry for Information and Broadcasting, which is the spokesperson for the government, they first asked us if we want to tell them what we want to ask about. We did everything, reached out to them, patiently waited, but ultimately they didn't want to answer anything. And that's when we went ahead and put our story out. And when we did put the story out, the government had to suffer in silence because they just had nothing to come back at us with. They had no answers and they could not say a word after our story was published. And I mean, I've had these experiences before as well. We did an interview with former Army Chief General V.K. Singh before the elections. And he said a few things to me in the interview, which were quite headline worthy. When the interview got published, he suddenly made an allegation on me and my organization that, oh, these are corrupt journalists and they've done, they've sort of done a mismatch of my report and all of that. And they put an interview out in the wrong manner. And then we completely opened the tapes, in the sense we gave them the completely unedited version of the whole interview. And it was exactly what he said in the story that we put out in the first place. He had to shut up. So anytime you do any work, any journalistic work, make sure, or rather you should be assured that people are going to come questioning that. And the only way to avoid that is by ensuring that your ground is as firm as is possibly doable, and that there are no rooms for someone to come and question you. So play the devil's advocate with you. Have your colleagues, have your editors who can do that job for you. And then when you pass through fire within your own team and within your own organization, it becomes that much more easier to go out in public and with confidence put a report out.
Great. So I guess this particular story was again translated in all the regional languages also. Uh, Now coming to regional languages, like do you think that because we have students from all different backgrounds, they come from, not necessary that every student has their education. He has completed his education in English, but then yes, we can see that future of regional language journalism. We can see, because BBC, when it is investing in regional languages, what can you see the future of regional journalism or regional language journalism? How can you motivate students to take up, if they are good in a particular language, what is the future that they might have in regional languages also? Like, what is your take on it?
No, regional languages, of course, is an area which is thriving, which is far more in terms of opportunities existing as against the national media scene. Because I'm not saying that the national media is not growing. National media is growing, but it's not thriving the way it was earlier. It will continue to grow, but the pace of growth, at least I see, and as is validated by the BBC's own initiative in 2017, is where the growth is. And if I can add, maybe the area of growth is also in going local, because what is happening is we don't have as many local news setups as they were earlier. When I started my career in 2005, there were several local city-based, community-based newspapers. Now today, of course, newsprint is far more expensive than it was earlier, but there are ways and means to do it through digital terms. So can regional and can local journalism have a new lease of life thanks to digital? I mean, I know of several community platforms which are, for instance, based in Gujarat, but because of their nature of being digital, they're attracting followers even from New Jersey and Nigeria, because it's boundaryless. So can regional and local news organizations come up through digital means? I think that's a big question, and possibly a very exciting area of growth.
Okay. So, on this note, I will also give opportunity to students, because I've been asking questions since 40 minutes now. I will also give opportunity for students interaction. If we can take questions from students or faculty also. So anyone who would like to have their questions, please go ahead. Any questions from students or faculty, maybe? Sagar sir, are you speaking?
I think you said that there's some problem that he's facing.
Okay, he is. Any other student who would like to ask their question?
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Some problem with camera, but I will ask. We're talking about also, and what type of assignments are given to the
I'm not sure if I'm able to. I mean, his voice isn't exactly very clear.
Yes, clear. So can you type it in the chat box? I will ask him the question. We'll repeat that question.
So Sukhda, what I've done is,
Yes.
as we wait for the questions, there is a small
Yes.
kind of like a little bit of a write-up of sorts that I had kind of made for this. Do you want
Okay,
me to kind of just go through it, and possibly if
sure.
that answers, or if based
Yes,
on that somebody wants to say something?
definitely, definitely.
Okay, so I'll just sorry, I'm just going to read out of it.
Yes, yes.
So I, like, when I agreed with Sukta on this new age journalism, I realized that it was a bit of a cliche, because like, it's not like I'm a man from the future who's going to talk about something in the times ahead. I think I'll talk to you as somebody who has arrived in this space, that you are in today, a few years before you. And I just want to kind of share with you my observations about uh, what I have seen. And instead of this thing being labeled as new age journalism, I think let's just keep it as notes from the field. So the first note that I'll kind of address is, what's the present like? I mean, you're all students and faculty, which is training people to become journalists or tomorrow. So what is it like right now? I think it's paradoxical. It's quite contradictory right now, and that's because it's very confusing. Is the media situation really growing, or it's shriveling? What's the truth, really? So I think after 2019 elections, several mainstream media organizations started shedding their staff. And this doesn't have a, it's not about who won the election and that's why something happened. Don't draw that kind of a correlation. But I think it was more of a reflection of an overall toughening media environment, strained finances, and the evolution of technology. And this trend of staff shedding, news organizations kind of shrinking, it has only been accelerated since the pandemic started, which was less than a year after the elections. And I don't need to tell you guys in Pune, because you've just lost a tabloid of your own in your own city, so you are fairly familiar with this trend that I'm talking about. And whether this will become better, I really don't know. But the other side, and as I said, it's a contradictory situation. The other side is that the consumption of news is exponentially growing. US, Japan are the two countries where news consumption has grown, but which is the third country which has seen an even bigger explosion in consumption of news? That's India. India has the highest consumption of news in the last 1 year. So there is hunger, but how many organizations are there to give or to feed that hunger in a sustainable fashion? That's really the question. And organizations are finding it difficult. And when there is vacuum, the space is always filled. As we know, nature does not like vacuum. So the space is always filled by the space which organizations are shrinking and losing out on is filled. And filled by what? I'm sure you know this answer more than I do. We can all go back to our Instagram pages, our YouTube pages, and see where we're getting our news from. Those are the organizations, those are the players who are filling this space in. Mm, I think the forms of presentations are changing rapidly. They are evolving extremely fast. Very exciting time generally to be in. But look, it's not that internet has brought about this golden age of journalism. I would not go that far. There is a boom. There is an explosion of players. There's an explosion of formats. But there's also a dark side that is existing, and that dark side is the lack of credibility. There are various people who are masquerading as journalists, but who in reality are just people who are furthering propaganda. What is their credibility? We don't know. So there are a lot of these actors, also dark actors, who come into picture, thanks to the retreating media space and thanks to the internet boom. It's not very easy also to kind of sift through what is good and what is bad. I fully understand the dilemma that many people face. So the second question, what form of journalism holds the most potential? And someone who's starting the career, what should I be looking at, right? So as I said, there is hunger for news. There are many routes available. There is national media, there is national languages media like Hindi and English, based in the national capitals or state capitals. There's also state-based local operations. There are also more local geographical operations, and then there are also those digital operations. Remember, I told you about an online community site which is based in Gujarat but is attracting attention and following from New Jersey as well as Nigeria. both places of a lot of Gujarati expatriate community. So there are a lot of these spaces in which you can, based on your interest, find yourself doing well in. It's the case of you answering what suits me the most. In my case, English was my calling, and defense and foreign policy were my subjects, and that's how I am where I am today. But each of our paths are different, and we should focus and play on what our strengths are. Yes, as we already discussed, the national media space is saturated. It's not the case that it's not growing, but the pace has clearly slowed down. Digitally, newer ventures are coming up, very powerful journalism. You're seeing through many different digital ventures, but there is a bit of a crisis in terms of sustainability. Many platforms are trying the subscription model where you pay for the news you consume. Whether these models have been successful, whether they will stay with us in the long run, is something that will still have to be seen. It's not, as of now, very clear. We spoke about the regional media scene and how BBC's own experience validates the fact that there is immense hunger, there is immense growth possible in the regional media setup, and that's something that I would really encourage all of you to kind of, uh, explore. Let's talk finally about, what does this situation of confusion, of contradiction, some growth explosion somewhere, retreating of, the mainstream media as such, the coming in of players with not a lot of credibility, what does it all boil down for me? I am a journalist of tomorrow. What does it mean for me? So I think if there is one currency that really works and I value it the most, that currency is called credibility. Every action that you undertake, it can be whether you're preparing a presentation or you're writing a thesis or you're doing a report, it must be as truthful as possible. It should be as accurate as possible, and it should be free from your personal bias. And when all of this happens is when you earn what is called as credibility. You should struggle hard if you have to, but then this is something that you should always keep, because you know what credibility offers? It opens those doors for you which you never even thought existed. So I think I value it the most, and I would say, as journalists of tomorrow, you guys should strive as hard as possible to achieve credibility. It's a bit like building a brand, frankly. It's like someone saying that, oh, I don't know this person, or I don't know this organization very well. I don't know if that person agrees with me or not, but because that person has written something, or because that person has done this report, I will trust that person because I know that that person is credible. So you should strive to kind of gain that recognition from people, from your audience. And I think that's where you will have arrived at a very important milestone, and something that you is best advised to never give up in your career. uh, the other thing is social media, right? Like I hold some very strong views about social media, and I mean, I may be sounding like some uncle or some elder of yours who's trying to advise you, but frankly, that's not the case. What I'm trying to say is, I find a lot of people spending a lot of time on social media, and it's ultimately you giving your hard-earned time to the growth of someone else, to the growth of that social media platform at that time. And I get it, like I really get it, the instant gratification in terms of likes, retweets, shares and all. Absolutely, I understand it. But instead of you giving your time and helping that brand grow, how about turning the table? You valuing your time, putting more value on your time, maybe doing the kind of groundbreaking work that you wish to do, carrying out an investigation that you've always wanted to, or investing it in your own self. And then that report, that product that you bring about, is then put to social media, and then let social media work for you. Let social media work to build your brand. I would say that that's perhaps how I would see social media. Uh, I know there are many colleagues, many journalists who spend a lot of their time on social media. I used to be one of them till some time ago, when I realized that, look, I'm giving my time to the growth of some other organization, why don't we turn the table? And I kind of believe that social media is there to stay. Its power is unquestionable. Its influence is unquestionable. It's about how you want to use it instead of letting it use you, because social media is free, and when everything is free, the product is you, right? So that's my take on social media. As a journalist, I think, you know, you should always be thinking. Don't let your mind rest at any point. Keep thinking about something has happened. Was it done in the right way? Were the right things done? Is this policy correct? What does the other side have to say? Is there a side of it which is in public interest which has not been known? Can I do something to kind of unravel that? These are things that you should be asking yourself. Your mind should always be thinking of. Uh, what should you do in terms of opportunities? I would say your stage can be anywhere, frankly. As I said, I was interning with a newspaper, and when I was interning, I got to know about this community newspaper which would pay per article, and I just took it instantly. And I can't tell you how much it helped me build my contacts, and more than that, build my confidence in being able to report. And then that kind of feeds you to do something even bigger. So your stage can be anywhere. Don't I would say, don't pick and choose. Opportunities are not as much as or as many as they used to be, and don't let them go if they come to you. uh, your stage can, as I said, can be anywhere. Be ready to perform. Look for opportunities wherever you get them. uh, you know, people in Maharashtra, Mumbai and Pune are quite familiar with trains, right? Because we use so much of them. I'm from Bombay. And you know, you can't always think that if I only get the window seat, I'll enter the train, right? We don't do that. We somehow climb on the doors and we slowly make our way to the window seat. So take the opportunity that comes to you. There are not too many, frankly. The space is not growing, as I said, as it used to. Take your opportunities and, you know, perform. Be ready to perform wherever it is. Um Lastly, I would say the one thing that is now going to change, in fact, has already changed, is the fact that, you know, your audience is consuming your news on digital platforms, increasingly so. So in the newspapers and the magazines of earlier times, we had editors who would structure it for you, who would know what story should be on page one, what story should be on page two. Senior news producers still structure the news bulletin for you. So they say that, okay, this story is the top story, then this should follow it, and then we'll go live to this place and stuff like that. But now, as you increasingly consume your news, like I see a lot of my news on YouTube. My editors, they see a lot of our stuff on mobile phones. I'm sure you do as well. Now, when this happens, those senior editors and those senior producers who are designing, they're all gone, right? It's an algorithm which is basically deciding what you and I are likely to watch next, and they'll give you suggestions based on your history. Now, how good or how bad that algorithm will be and is an open question, right? And is it sounding good? Not to me, at least. Is it sounding bad? I don't think so. So in this situation, what will help? And I come back to this thing I started with, that in this situation, what will help is the credibility. So as a journalist, look to build your credibility. As a journalist, look to build yourself along with brands and organizations which are credible. And as an audience, look for organizations which are credible. The more we look towards credibility as our guide and as our principal guide in deciding what we take seriously and what we don't, I think an algorithm, however wrong it may be, cannot really mislead us. So these are some of the points I wanted to share with you, and I hope that they've been of use to you. Thank you.
Uh, Douglas, I guess you're on mute. No. You're on mute.
We have 5 minutes. Can I ask 2 questions?
Yes, sir, please.
First question is, now some of the students are from second year, and for last 1 year, all of us are at, and we are doing online learning. What type of stories they can do if they want publish it on social media? Because there are a lot of constraints on going out and meeting people or taking insurance. So can you give a lot of tips to students?
So I think one thing that students can definitely do is, let's say you are in some part of the country, wherever your homes are, and you want to look at, maybe say do an interview, or you want to maybe talk about a civic issue, or say the lack of oxygen supply in your area. I think the most advantageous thing that has happened in the last 1 year is that people have realized how important their smartphones are, right? Now, today, viral clips from places whose names we've possibly not heard of are creating front page stories on national dailies. And that's the power essentially. So don't think that this pandemic has in any sense kind of clipped your wings, or has curtailed you, or has not, or has, shackled your freedom or something. I think there's always a perspective that is different. And in this case, I would urge you to see that the perspective is that the world is far more connected. Internet is reaching places it has never. If I can give my own example, when the pandemic started, you will recall last year, in April and May and June, we were talking about China's moves in Ladakh, and how Galwan clash happened, and our soldiers died. Their soldiers died as well. They were killed. So how do you do a story like this? Because I can't go to Ladakh, and the pandemic was so severe that I couldn't even possibly go to many places in Delhi. So what we did was we started talking to experts who know about Ladakh, who know about the army, who know about China via Zoom. That was my introduction to them via Zoom and Skype. We did a whole host of interviews. And incidentally, because we are all in the same boat, you are as cooped up inside your house as I am. And people are spending so much of their times on webinar and on answering questions. So people are also in that sense available to you, which earlier they would not. They would be traveling, they would be attending meetings. So I think it's the wrong thing to say, but the advantages of a shared suffering, they're also there. So don't think that your wings have been clipped. You can always think of innovative ways to come up with and cover things. I hope I've answered your question,
Yes,
Sagarji.
yes, sir. Second question is, when we are looking at the stories made by BBC, especially for social media, uh, usually the stories are very rich. So reporters might be using good quality camera, maybe smartphone. I'm not exactly aware. But on the other hand, when I'm looking at some regional news channels, they are relying on the footage which their reporters are sending them, or sometimes the clips which are circulated on social media, and the quality of visuals is very poor. So the packages which are created for social media by the organization like BBC with good quality footage, visually very rich, and poor quality visuals used by satellite channels, which earlier were using very good quality of visuals. Now we can see the difference between them. How you are looking at this difference? This is one question. And related question is, how do you look at the satellite channels? What future of satellite channels, let's say after 3 or 4 years?
So I'll take the second question first, if that's okay. And
Yeah, please.
I think, see, satellite channels, by which I think you mean regional news operations, which are, say, available on
All
cable
even
TV.
by satellite channels, all national and regional channels.
Right.
What?
So I think there is definitely that scope, and as we are seeing, a lot of channels are also kind of investing in digital. They are also kind of taking a few steps back. So these two questions are kind of interrelated. What has happened in several media organizations in the last few years is that organizations have cut down on certain areas to expand themselves in other areas. So, say they have cut down on the work of camera persons, of good quality video journalists, to kind of invest in, say, possibly expanding their digital reach, or to possibly make their studios look better, or to maybe hire more journalists, or things like that. Every organization has its priority. And in that, what has happened is somewhere the whole visual appeal of news has kind of come down. Now, I have seen this in the Indian media because I've obviously worked there for the longest time, and I'm seeing now in the BBC for the last about 3.5 years, is that it's about how well that organization manages to break the even ground or balance itself. In BBC also, sometimes depending on what the story is and whether how much of our reach is in a certain area, we do have to rely on visuals which may not be A plus, but sometimes the story is more important than the quality of its visuals. But sometimes, because you've chosen to not invest in good cameras or good camera journalists or video journalists, you end up suffering in terms of the quality of your visuals. So these are different scenarios. And I think as the channels and media organizations kind of do their rethink on where they will grow in digital vis-a-vis the TV, it's a time of churn. I wouldn't say that legacy media is not going to happen or things are not going to be good going forward, but there is a very clear segment of growth in TV which will happen. But there is a possibly even faster segment of growth in digital where even that is going to happen. So it's not doomsday for anyone, but maybe opportunities and the pace of investment will be higher in one area as against the other. And if your investments are made in that fashion, then sometimes you will see that compromise on the quality of the footage or the quality of news that is visually available, because after all, TV and even digital is a visual media. So the more you compromise on that, you will somewhere end up hurting your own viewers' interest as well.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, hi, ma'am. My name is Abhishek Marathne, sir. If I can ask a question.
Yes.
Yes, Jugal sir, first of all, thank you so much for a wonderful insight on, let's say, a new era of media, like digital media. My question is about what we discussed a few minutes back regarding credibility. All right, and this question strikes me because of the recent scenarios after West Bengal elections about TMC and BJP. So now, when we say credibility of news or any information, and along with that we say digital media, wherein social media will be a huge platform to spread news. I'll use this word authentication of news, where a news has been uploaded on a social media, and information has been uploaded on a social media, and till the time we authenticate that news, don't you think that credibility is for a toss till time?
No, your audio wasn't exactly very clear, but if I could understand, you said that in the recent post-election brawl between the TMC and the BJP.
No, I'm just
yeah. Do you want to take it further, or maybe you want to like type it here so that, or Sukda, have you understood the question? Maybe you can help me understand it. It was a bit muffled. I couldn't exactly.
Yeah, actually his voice
everything.
was cracking. Yes. Abhishek, is it okay if you type in the chat box?
Sure, ma'am. I'll do that.
Yes. So I guess even
Thanks,
we
Abhishek.
have to wind the session in next 5 minutes, because even Jugal has his next commitment. So I think Abhishek's question will be the last question that we can take it from student side.
If there's anyone who wants to ask me till Abhishek types, I mean, yeah, we can do that.
Yes.
Provided your audio is better than Abhishek's.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Hamad. I'm a second year journalism student at Seamedu. And
Hi,
I wanted
Hamad.
to ask you, sir, recently, like India has been falling in the press freedom index. So I really want to ask you, how free is the media? And this is with regards to in the last 1.5, 2 years, we've seen several new digital outlets like the Wire or the Print or Scroll getting, they're being taken up on like legal charges by state governments or the center sometimes. So how free is the media in India actually?
So you mentioned about the World Press, the press freedom reports, and there are actually a couple of them which have come, which don't exactly paint a very nice picture of how free the media really is. So I don't think there's anything more that I can say than people who've done a full research on how media is functioning. And I don't think it's anybody's case. I mean, look, I'm not trying to be diplomatic or something. The fact is that we are all operating in very challenging circumstances. Uh, the space for dissent, the space to criticize, the space to accept criticism, and improve yourself isn't exactly thriving. It's not exactly growing. So it's not hidden in any form, but, and this is what you should take away, I feel, from this, is that there are still organizations who are doing their job. There are still journalists who are fighting the good battle. And it's not doomsday yet. It's not that you are simply not able to do anything. You're not able to file your reports with authenticity. The space is shrinking, but the space is still there. The number of journalists who are doing the right kind of journalism perhaps may be dwindling, but they're still there.
Okay. And I guess
Yeah,
Abhishek's question would be
Abhishek's
how
question is,
to authenticate a news and to get that credibility. How to authenticate any news to get the credibility.
very good question, Abhishek. So this is always a big challenge, especially in developing breaking stories. So I'll give you the BBC's own example. We don't believe in being the first. So हम ना तो तेज हैं सबसे, और ना हम फर्स्ट हैं, और हम ना कभी क्लेम करते हैं कि हमको फर्स्ट होना चाहिए. Frankly, I have, before I even joined the BBC, I have never been enamored by being the first. And I think, I don't know what is this obsession in India that the channel has to be the first and only then I will see it. Because there are many channels who have done huge blunders in the race to be first. And I think every year or every week we can get these examples refreshed. Okay. The thing is, in BBC, we don't believe in being the first, but we believe in putting something out which is accepted and which is truthful. So in this case, for example, if there's a clip that has come, to us, and in this day and age, there's a lot of fake clips that come. There are a lot of wrongly attributed clips that come. There are things which are from abroad which are shown as local, and they're whipped up. The sentiments get whipped up. So what we do is, every time we've received a clip or we've received such kind of social media things, we don't run to report. We first run to verify. So we verify using our reporters. We verify using those reporters, their contacts. We verify using the authorities, and all this is good old journalism. That's the best part, that in this new age, no one's telling you to abandon the good old tools. They're always there and they always come in handy. So in this instance, for example, when all these social media posts started coming, had an organization chosen to first put them out and then verify, then obviously credibility is the price, is the victim in that case. But if you choose to withhold it, because that's also in public interest, to withhold what may be wrongful, you first verify, you first figure out when did it happen, where did it happen, is it even connected to this, and then you put out a story. That does way more good than being the so-called first in the wrong news. So I think if if you're okay with getting this obsession off our backs, that I want to be the first, I think the obsession should be that what I say should be believed and what I say should be the truth. I think that will help us in the long run. I hope that answers your question, Abhishek.
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much for your valuable time and showing such a huge insight on matter.
Welcome.
So I would request Sagar sir to just wind up with few lines.
Very interesting. You have started with your journey, and basically you were talking about the culture of BBC. BBC has still got a different spatial space in our mind. Because and when you're telling us efforts you're putting in the right information, especially we're talking about the 7 months efforts and then approaching different ministers and then telling us what was the right thing, what was the correct picture. So all of us should remember that what efforts we need in for getting the information using different tools which we have got right to information. Most important thing all of us is rather than we using social media, let's make the I mean make the best use of social media rather than we are being product for that media. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, giving us time. And the most important thing is credibility. All of us should remember that point. Whatever we do, the example which we are given about by trains, extremely important for all of us. You have told us what is the picture right now, job opportunities and other avenues. So basically, we have to start from somewhere and definitely get the position. Thank you so much for thank you. Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
for having me, sir.
Thank you.